Hi everybody, I'm Susan, Kate's mom, and she's decided that today's a good time for me to take over the video portion of this because we're going to talk about being afraid in the hive, and something I know very well. Kate's much calmer around the hives than I am. We've been doing this for 5 years, and I will say I'm much better than the first 2 years, but I still have some anxiety when I'm holding an entire frame of bees. So one of the reasons I get nervous is because there are different types of bees. There are lots of different species, and we're specifically just talking about honeybees, right? Not wasps or yellow jackets or hornets or anything like that, but we're talking about honeybees. And there are different kinds of honeybees. There are Italian honeybees, there are Russian honeybees, and there's a whole host of other honeybees that you can have. However, we in our area most specifically, or have had in the past, Italians and Russians, and they both have different characteristics. Italians are known for being much calmer. They're also a lighter color, so when you look into the hive, you'll see more of a gold color. And they also produce a lot of honey, and they go longer into the season, but they're not as resistant to pests and mites and all the problems that you can have in a hive. So one year we tried Russians, which are much more aggressive. They're darker in color. They produce a lot of honey, but they're also more resistant to pests. So we decided to try Italians and Russians one year. And the Russians were chasing me out of the bee yard almost every other week. Some of the other things to know about bees are there are different worker groups that they have to be in. So obviously we've talked about the queen. She's the number one most important female in the hive. This box is actually called a colony. So there's the queen, who's the head of the colony, and then there are the worker bees. They're all females, as Kate has told you, but in that there are some subgroups of worker bees. So there's a nurse bee, and those nurse bees literally take care of all the eggs that the queen has laid. And nurse bees can visit one tiny little brood piece in the brood chamber over 1,000 times a day. So they're constantly going back and checking on it and feeding it and making sure it's alive and growing. Then there are forager bees who, when they get a little bit older, they go out and they go up to 3 miles away, and they're basically looking for honey. And they're looking for pollen and they're looking for pollen and nectar. And so they go out, they search in a 3-mile radius, they come back, and first of all, they tell other bees, but that is all they do. They unload the nectar as soon as they get into the hive, and then they go out again to the place they found it. They can do that trip 5 or 6 times a day, back and forth all day, bringing food into the hive. My nemesis, the bad guy in the hive to me, are the guard bees. They love to attack or guard the hive when any kind of threat has come upon it. And so they're the ones that first come out and start bopping my net, my veil, to tell me, stay away, stay away. They also exude a smell or pheromones to tell the other bees, oh, this is an intruder or somebody who's going to hurt us. And that's when other bees start coming around. So Kate is right in what she said earlier. There's a saying that says, just give love to the bees. So as long as you're calm and you're just thinking good thoughts, you're not putting off any smell or excitement or worry, pheromones that the bees can pick up on. So that's the most important thing to do when you get into bees. So now I'm going to open the hive and we'll see what's going on in this one. as Kate told you, this is our smallest hive. I'm going to take this covering off because it's warm enough. They don't need the insulation anymore. You can see that they're out front, and I'm going to smoke them, if I have any smoke, and let them know that I'm coming in. And then I'm going to pop the quilt cover off. I don't know if there are any bees under here for you to see, just maybe a few. Sometimes they get up in there. So this hive is growing, and you've seen the large amounts of brood that we've showed you with lots of different coloration. That means more baby bees are getting born every day. So the hive grows, and it can be anywhere from approximately 20,000 to almost 100,000 in the summer as more and more bees grow and are born. So here we're looking at this, and they look like they're doing really well again. You can see these empty frames. They're the ones that they will eventually fill with honey and nectar. So I always start with one that's not quite as full. Just to kind of see, so you can see what they're doing. This was a frame that didn't have much build out on it, and they have gone ahead and started to build honeycomb in it.
I'm going to interject. Do you also see the queen? She just, so we see some really beautiful architecture that the bees have produced. The queen just went under this, this build out here. So this queen's pretty shy. So let's see if she will come out again. But we can look in here. We have a lot of different things going on in here. We have this nectar. You see different kinds of pollen. We have yellow pollen, orange pollen.
So here's some orange pollen right here. You can see.
Let me move it a little.
Okay. I still don't see her. One of the things that you have to be careful about when you're pulling out frames is you don't want to be so rough or aggressive with it that if you're not over the box that the queen falls out, because then you've got a problem. You've got a colony that doesn't have a queen. So you want to make sure that she's always safe and stays in the hive.
So if you rewind this video and oh, there she is. Wait. Oh, do you see her? She has that longer abdomen. Yep, there she is in the corner there. Longer abdomen, little different in color. Okay.
So back to the question of, are we afraid of bees? You can see how these bees are just kind of floating around me right now. They're not mad, they're not aggressive. They're and there's just a quiet little hum in the bee yard. When they get angry or they start to get agitated, the hive literally gets louder and louder and louder, and the hum gets much more aggressive, and that tells you, okay, it's time to kind of finish up and close everything up, because either that or you're going to get stuck. So I'm going to pull this next one out. This is So very pretty. You can tell that the queen's been busy. See all that brood? No.
Look at this guy right here. Where was I just pointing? Sorry about that. Some of these bees are shaking their bottoms, like my mom was just talking about. Bees dance, and that dance is showing the other bees, where a good source of nectar is. So they're literally doing a dance, showing them the twists and turns they need to do in the air for them to get to that pollen and nectar source.
So far, we don't see any drone cells in this hive yet. You can see how this brood, or all these babies, it's very flat. Hopefully in a day or so, she'll be making drones, which are big bubbles, or they look like bullet points. And we're going to, and then there will be boys in the hive. We'll be able to show you what boy bees look like at that point. One more frame, and then we'll close her up for the day. If you look closely, it might just look like a lot of bees, that they're all the exact same. But baby bees are smaller and they're fuzzy. They have a lot of fur on them, like Kate had said before. So I don't know if you can see any smaller bees or that have a lot of fuzz on them, but those are the baby bees. If you look down at the very bottom, here's some bee larvae that we accidentally separated from the hive. And those are baby bees that unfortunately will not be born now because they're not in a cell.
This looks like a furry bee. Here, let me take this. So you can see some fuzzy bees over in this corner.
Okay. So that's another edition. We hope we've answered some questions that you might have had. Feel free to keep telling us what you want to hear about, and we'll see you next time in the bee yard.